I used to believe that love meant sacrifice, that being a good mother, a good woman, meant putting everyone else's needs before my own until there was nothing left of me but the empty shell of someone who once had dreams. At 73, I had spent decades perfecting the art of disappearing into the background of my own life, convincing myself that my worth lay in how much I could give, how much I could endure, how little I could ask for in return. My husband had been gone for 5 years when it all started to unravel. Harold was a good man, steady and kind, who had always treated me as an equal partner in our 48-year marriage. After his funeral, I thought I would lean on my children for comfort, for the warmth of family that would help fill the enormous void his absence had created. Instead, I found myself becoming smaller and smaller in their eyes until I was nothing more than an inconvenience to be managed. My son lived 3 hours away with his wife and their twin daughters. He had always been ambitious, driven by a need to appear successful that sometimes worried me. His wife was a different story altogether. She had a way of smiling that never quite reached her eyes, especially when she looked at me. During their visits, she would comment on everything from the outdated furniture in my living room to the way I prepared dinner, always with that same saccharine tone that made her criticism sound almost like concern. The requests started small. Could I help with the down payment on their new house? The twins needed private school tuition. His business was going through a rough patch and needed a loan to stay afloat. Each time, I opened my checkbook without hesitation, telling myself this was what family did for each other. This was love in action. Harold's life insurance policy and our modest savings account slowly drained away, but I convinced myself it was all going to good use. My daughter-in-law began suggesting, gently at first, that I should consider selling the house Harold and I had built together. It was too big for one person, she said. Too much maintenance. Too many memories that might be unhealthy for me to cling to. She knew of a lovely senior community just 20 minutes from their place, where I could have friends my own age and not worry about home repairs or feeling isolated. I signed the power of attorney document on a rainy Tuesday morning in April. My son had brought it over with a stack of other papers, explaining that it was just a precautionary measure. If something happened to my health, if I had another fall like the one the previous winter, it would make it easier for him to help me with medical decisions. The document was thick and filled with legal language I didn't fully understand, but I trusted him. He was my son. He was looking out for me. Later that day, I realized I had given him complete control over my finances. The family vacation to the coast was supposed to be my birthday gift to myself. I had always loved the ocean, and it had been years since I had seen it. I paid for the rental house, the flights, all the meals. I was so excited to spend time with my grandchildren, to watch them build sandcastles and collect shells. I pictured long walks on the beach, family dinners where we would laugh and share stories. The kind of memories that would sustain me through the long winter months ahead. At the airport, everything went wrong. My suitcase was overweight, packed with gifts for the girls and special treats I had spent weeks preparing. My daughter-in-law made a scene at the check-in counter, her voice carrying across the terminal as she complained about my poor packing skills and how I never thought ahead. Other travelers stared. My son stood beside her, saying nothing, his face flushed with embarrassment that seemed directed at me, rather than at her public humiliation of his mother. After we passed through security, they led me to a crowded seating area near a noisy food court. The children were cranky and loud, other passengers kept bumping into my chair, and the overhead announcements made it impossible to think clearly. My daughter-in-law handed me a bottle of water and told me to wait there while they went to handle some last-minute arrangements. My son kissed my forehead absently and promised they would be back soon. I waited for 4 hours. When I finally approached the gate agent, hands trembling as I showed her my boarding pass, she looked at me with genuine confusion. The flight to Portland had departed 2 hours earlier. My family's names were on the passenger manifest. Mine was not. There had never been a ticket purchased for me. I called my son's phone 17 times. It went straight to voicemail. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and making my legs so weak I had to sit down on the nearest bench. They had planned this. They had taken my money, accepted my excited preparations for weeks, watched me pack gifts for the grandchildren, and they had never intended to take me along. I was surplus baggage they had decided to leave behind. The rage that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It started as a cold, hard knot in my stomach and spread through my entire body until my hands shook with it. For the first time in years, I felt fully awake. I walked to the ticket counter and bought a one-way flight to Portland, but not to meet them. I bought a ticket to Portland, Oregon, where my college roommate lived. My college roommate, who had been inviting me to visit for years, who had always signed her Christmas cards with reminders that her guest room was always ready for me. I had a secret checking account that Harold and I had maintained for emergencies, one that my son knew nothing about. I withdrew $2,000 in cash and turned off my cell phone. For the first time in decades, I disappeared from my own life by choice. The next morning found me on Martha's doorstep, suitcase in hand and probably looking like a refugee from my own family. Martha took one look at my face and pulled me into the kind of fierce hug I hadn't received since Harold died. She didn't ask questions right away. Instead, she made coffee. Thick and strong, the way we used to drink it during our college all-nighters. And she let me cry until I was empty. When I finally told her everything, her reaction was swift and decisive. Martha had spent 30 years as a family law attorney before retiring, and she recognized financial elder abuse when she heard it. She was already reaching for her phone before I finished speaking, calling a colleague who specialized in these cases. By the end of the week, I had legal representation and a plan. Meanwhile, my son and his wife had returned from their vacation to find me gone and my secret account emptied. The panic in his voice when he finally reached me was palpable, though I noticed he didn't apologize for leaving me at the airport. Instead, he wanted to know where I was, what I thought I was doing, how I could be so irresponsible. His wife got on the phone, and her mask slipped completely. "I was being manipulated," she said. I was clearly not thinking straight. They were going to have to take steps to protect me from myself. They hired a lawyer who immediately moved to freeze my accounts, claiming I was missing and possibly incapacitated. Social media posts appeared on my son's Facebook page, painting me as a confused elderly woman who had wandered away from her family. The comments poured in from neighbors and family friends, all offering prayers and support for my poor, worried children. The counterattack came swiftly. My attorney sent a formal letter declaring me mentally competent and legally represented. She filed papers to revoke the power of attorney, citing fraud and undue influence. Most importantly, she filed a civil lawsuit seeking recovery of all the money I had given them, plus damages for financial exploitation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The court battle that followed was brutal but necessary. Bank records told a clear story of money flowing from my accounts to theirs. Airport security footage showed them abandoning me. Most damaging of all were the text messages my daughter-in-law had sent to her sister, joking about how easy it was to manipulate the old woman and planning how they would spend the money from selling my house. The day I testified was the hardest day of my life, but also the most liberating. I stood in that courtroom and told my story in my own words, without apology or sugarcoating. I looked directly at my son as I described the 8 hours I spent alone in that airport, wondering what I had done wrong, wondering if they were dead in a car accident somewhere, wondering if I was losing my mind. I told the judge about the slow erosion of my self-worth, the way I had been trained to see my needs as selfish and my boundaries as cruel. I described the hollow feeling of giving everything and still being found wanting. of loving people who saw me as nothing more than an ATM with a pulse. But I also told him about finding my voice again, about the way Martha's guest room had become a sanctuary, where I could remember who I used to be, about the part-time job I had taken at the local library, where the head librarian treated me like a valuable member of the team rather than a burden to be managed, about the book club I had joined, where my opinions mattered and my presence was genuinely welcomed. The judge ruled in my favor on every count. My son and daughter-in-law were ordered to repay every penny they had taken, plus additional damages that reflected the court's disgust with their behavior. The power of attorney was voided, and a restraining order was issued to keep them away from me. Later that day, I received a call from my youngest granddaughter. She was crying as she apologized for her parents' behavior, explaining that she had wanted to call me for months, but had been forbidden to do so. She was 18 now, legally an adult, and she wanted to know if she could come visit me. She had been accepted to a college in Oregon and wondered if I might help her with tuition since her parents were now claiming they couldn't afford it. I established a trust fund for her education the next day, carefully structured so that her parents couldn't touch it. 2 weeks later, she flew out to spend the summer with Martha and me, helping me shop for furniture for the little cottage I had decided to buy just outside Portland. We spent long afternoons on the porch, talking about everything and nothing, and I watched her discover the same sense of possibility I was rediscovering myself. My son made several attempts to reconcile, each one following the same pattern. First came the anger, accusations that I was being vindictive and destroying the family. Then came the manipulation, reminders of all the ways he had been a good son, promises that things would be different if I would just give them another chance. Finally came the guilt, stories about how my actions were affecting the children, how I was being selfish in my old age. I listened to each voicemail exactly once, then deleted it. I had learned the difference between love and exploitation, between family loyalty and self-destruction. Real love doesn't demand that you disappear. Real family doesn't abandon you in airports or steal your dignity along with your savings. The cottage became my refuge and my laboratory for learning how to live for myself. I painted the walls colors I loved instead of safe, neutral tones. I planted a garden full of vegetables I actually enjoyed eating rather than ones I thought I should serve to guests. I bought comfortable furniture that suited my body instead of impressive pieces, meant to impress visitors who never came anyway. Martha and I took a cruise to Alaska the following spring, something I had always wanted to do but had never dared suggest when I was married. We ate too much, laughed too loudly, and stayed up past midnight playing cards with strangers who became friends. I felt like a teenager again, giddy with the freedom to be spontaneous and silly and completely myself. The financial settlement allowed me to live comfortably while also supporting causes I cared about. I began volunteering with an organization that helped other elderly victims of family financial abuse, sharing my story with women who thought they were alone in their suffering. Many of them were surprised to learn that what had happened to them had a name, that it was actually illegal, that they had rights and options they had never considered. One of these women became a close friend. She had been systematically isolated from her friends by a daughter who convinced her that they were all trying to take advantage of her money. Together, we learned to trust our instincts again, to recognize red flags we had been trained to ignore, to value our own peace of mind above other people's expectations. 3 years later, I received a wedding invitation from my granddaughter. She was marrying a young man she had met in college, someone who treated her with the respect and kindness she had learned to expect from watching Martha and me navigate our friendship. The wedding would be small, she wrote, just close family and friends. Her parents would not be attending. I flew to Colorado for the ceremony, wearing a dress the color of spring flowers that made me feel beautiful and visible. As I watched her walk down the aisle, radiant with joy and confidence, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with hope. She had broken the cycle. She had learned that love should lift you up, not tear you down. The young man's grandmother was also there, a woman about my age who had raised him after his parents died in a car accident. We sat together during the reception, comparing stories about the challenges and rewards of loving difficult families. She told me something I will never forget, that the greatest gift we can give, the people we love, is the example of how to value ourselves. These days, I wake up each morning in my own bed, in my own house, surrounded by things I chose because they bring me joy rather than because they meet someone else's approval. I have coffee with Martha every Tuesday. I volunteer at the animal shelter on Thursdays. I take painting classes on Saturday mornings, discovering talents I never knew I had because I was too busy serving other people's needs to explore my own interests. My relationship with my son remains severed, and I have made peace with that reality. Some relationships cannot be repaired because they were never built on a foundation of mutual respect in the first place. I grieved the son I thought I had, the family I thought I belonged to, but I do not regret the choices I made to protect myself. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed in that airport longer, if I had eventually found a way home and pretended nothing had happened. I think I would have continued shrinking until there was nothing left of me at all. Instead, I learned that it is never too late to save yourself, never too late to demand better, never too late to discover who you really are when you stop trying to be who everyone else wants you to be. My granddaughter calls me every Sunday now, sharing the small details of her married life, asking for advice about everything from gardening to career decisions. She values my opinion because I taught her, through my own example, that older women have wisdom worth seeking, that we are not burdens to be managed or resources to be depleted, but individuals with our own dreams and desires and rights. Last month, she told me she was pregnant. Her voice was full of excitement and just a touch of nervousness as she asked if I would consider moving closer when the baby comes. Not to provide free childcare, she was quick to clarify, but to be a real part of her child's life. To be the kind of grandmother who is loved and respected rather than merely tolerated. I told her I would think about it, and I am. The cottage has served its purpose as a place of healing and growth, but I find myself drawn to the idea of a new adventure, a new chapter, in a story I once thought was ending. I am 76 years old, and I am still becoming the person I was always meant to be. Tonight, I will call her back and tell her yes. Yes to being needed without being used. Yes to being valued for who I am rather than what I can provide. Yes to the possibility that love, real love, is still waiting for me in the years ahead. This is what I have learned. That dignity is not something you can give away, only something you can choose to reclaim. That family is not defined by blood, but by respect, kindness, and genuine care. That it is never too late to stop settling for less than you deserve, never too late to insist on better, never too late to finally come home to yourself.